The situation is alarming, particularly in the north, where millions are fleeing from terrorist groups. Around 600,000 children are at risk of dying from malnutrition. While demand for emergency aid is surging, funding has been in sharp decline, with the World Food Programme recently closing over 150 clinics treating malnourished children. The United States, which once provided more than half of Nigeria's aid, has significantly cut its support, particularly after President Trump's dismantling of U.S. aid. The WFP is now facing a $115 million shortfall, threatening vital food and health programs, including those in refugee camps like Bama in Borno State, where food distribution has already been reduced. Aid workers warn the situation could worsen without immediate intervention. Now for this discussion, we welcome Desmond Majekodunmi. He's a political and environmental activist, joins us live from Lagos. Thank you very much, Desmond, for joining us again. Good to see you. Desmond, to what extent should these governments prioritize human aid in this region, in Nigeria? As you know, we see that they were heavily dependent on foreign aid, and now we see the ones that a plug has been pulled out, they are in this crisis. Is there something that the government over there could or needs to do so that this does not get worsened?
Yes, the government needs to do what it should have been doing a long time ago, and not having to rely on, foreign aid. Why should America have to aid a nation like Nigeria with a tremendous agricultural resource, vast stretches of good fertile land, a lot of water bodies that can irrigate, a fairly good rain system as well, and a lot of variety in terms of the environment. So different types of crops can be growing. So a country like Nigeria relying on American aid is really not the best at all. And now the ball is very much in the court of the Nigerian government. Of course, they need to get immediate succor and comfort to those people, especially the vulnerable children and the women. That needs to be done immediately. And there are some little measures already being taken, but it needs to be a lot more. However, on a much more broader scale and looking a little bit into the future, Nigeria should learn from what India has done with her agricultural sector. India has embarked long time ago on an agricultural revolution that totally turned the tables after the colonial intervention had been stopped, and India now was on her own. And she's done marvelously well, using not just all this heavy equipment, but using the light scale equipment, using organic systems, using very effective agricultural systems that has made India a net exporter of a lot of agricultural products. So Nigeria should learn from the lesson of India, who I'm sure is not relying on American aid for her people to be able to eat.
Yes, indeed. That's a very good point that you bring out, Desmond. And how is, or is there any infrastructure that is in place in Nigeria where the communities can respond to this funding shortfall and they can enhance the humanitarian efforts in northern Nigeria?
Yes, that's a very important question. There is infrastructure in place, because even the aid that was coming from the US aid system, it went through local infrastructures. And that's how the food and the aid was able to get to the people. So it just means that the government, who actually, earning a bit more now than they used to a couple of years ago, because they've cut down the subsidy on fuel, on petrol subsidy. So money is back into the system that had been used and abused on the subsidy. So the funds are there, and the basic infrastructure is there. There are some humanitarian organizations who are very, very, very keen to ensure that people are not left to starve, especially the vulnerable ones. So there is good hope for the people, and the silver lining on what looked like a dark cloud was that this country, Nigeria, that has all the potential, will now be able to live up to her people's expectations and do the necessary to ensure that her people are not in hunger and ensure that they are making a good resource economic gain from the wonderful agricultural potential that is there.
Yes, and Desmond, building on our first or second question's answer, lastly, in what ways can India collaborate with Nigeria or African nations to address these shared issues like food insecurity?
Yes, this is so key because, when you have a winning team, which is what India is in the agricultural sector, there's no doubt about that. A country that was able to pull herself away from, what was a very oppressive colonialism that had gone on, where I believe there was even a time when the Indians weren't even allowed to manufacture their own cotton, even though the cotton was grown there. The oppression was terrible. And the way it was overcome, Nigeria and other African nations should learn from the textbook of India, of how she pulled herself out of this situation, how she even went into legal backward integration with her industries. You can't develop your industry unless you're sourcing your local material from our soil and all this. There's a lot that African nations and Nigeria particularly as the giant of Africa could learn from India. And again, to re-emphasize the small scale agriculture machinery, the mechanization of agriculture to a great extent in India is a lot of handheld tiles and small, tilling machines and small scale machinery, which doesn't impact so negatively on our soils, which are more delicate. The tropical soil is more delicate than soils in other terrains. It's not as deep, the topsoil level. So you need to, treat it more gently. And this is where we have a lot that could be gained from working in cooperation with India, who manufactures, I would imagine, probably 99% of the equipment that she uses in her agricultural sector.
Wow, I had no idea. Thank you very much, Desmond, for sharing that insight and teaching me about that. Thank you. Now we move on to our next news. Protests erupted in Nigeria's capital city, Abuja, as supporters of Nnamdi Kanu demanded his release. Kanu is the leader of the outlawed indigenous people of Biafra, and he faces terrorism charges. He has been in detention since 2021. Demonstrations spread across major roads, disrupting traffic and leaving commuters stranded. Some clashes also turned violent, with gunshots reported in certain areas. Meanwhile, police has responded by firing tear gas, deploying water cannons, and using electric barriers to disperse the crowds. Dozens of protesters, including members of Kanu's legal team and family, were arrested. Kanu denies all charges and is expected to begin his defense on Thursday after the court dismissed his no-case submission. His case has long been a flashpoint in the southeast, where the Igbo ethnic group alleges marginalization by the Nigerian government. Ivory Coast prepares for presidential election on October 25th amid tensions in Abidjan and other urban centers. President Alassane Ouattara, who is 83 years of age, seeks a fourth term despite criticism and opposition boycotts, with two leading candidates disqualified. Protests by young voters have been tear gassed and security forces deployed nationwide, while the opposition calls for voter registry audits and daily demonstrations. Infrastructure projects and economic growth Uttara have improved living standards, but cost of living and inequality remain high, and disinformation has fueled public mistrust. Let's listen into what some of the locals have said.
Oh, l'atmosphère est plutôt calme, plutôt calme. C'est peut-être vrai que dans un village, on a vu quelques petits remous, mais ces remous sont vite calmés.
Non, 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 vraiment, il y a eu des violences, mais ce n'est pas le souhait de quelqu'un, la violence. Donc, on ne pense pas que ça se reproduise, les violences, que Dieu nous éloigne de ça, et que le pays roule, et que le pays soit béni.
Bon, effectivement, les gens ont peur de venir visiter à cause des élections qui se passent. Il faut que ça passe d'abord pour que les gens ont peur, au fait, de quitter très loin, venir visiter. Voilà, c'est ça, au fait. Que présentement, là, à part le mois passé, jusqu'à ce mois, pas de visiteurs. On ne reçoit pas du tout.
Pour cette élection, la jeunesse souhaiterait qu'on va aux élections en paix. Que tout le monde soit libre de parler ce qu'il pense. Parce que la Côte